Hello, everyone, and welcome to Release the Beast 2 Round 1 Roundup. So, we've had our first game of our second tournament, and me and Stuart, last tournament, went through the end of each round, talked about the round matchups, talked about what happened, and it went down really well. So, we're going to do the same thing for this tournament. Um, as always, I have Stuart with me to help me guide me through the madness of the games that have been going on. Stuart, how are you?
I'm good. As people may have seen on Twitter, I've been daydreaming about the various worst units in the game that I can take to a local Japanese event and play. So this week has been me daydreaming about 30 squig hoppers in one unit. So who knows what next week will be? We'll find out.
Brilliant. Um, so last time that we did the show for the first event, we literally went through every single match of each roundup. The event has grown a little bit since then. So we're not going to go through every single matchup and talk about every single game. So what we've done, we picked a couple that we think um, were really interesting games, or that highlight something about the meta, highlight something about a particular army that we want to talk about. So we're going to talk about a couple of those, and then me and Stuart are just going to spitball some ideas about how we think the tournament's going and the meta in general, because it really is the first big event with some of the new big bads out, isn't it? It's the first big event with Stormcast and Iron Jaws, isn't it, Stuart?
Yeah, and just quickly, I would just like to say on to the fellow participants in the tournament. Now, last time after the first round, we would have had like 30 drops or something, right? It was something
Yeah.
ridiculous like that. But this time,
Loads.
I don't think we've had like any yet.
I think
Um,
we've had maybe one.
maybe yeah, just a couple or something. So I just want everyone to give themselves a bit of a pat on the back for staying
Yeah.
in it. I know
This
the temptation is with long term events like this to drop out if you don't win the first game, but I'm glad everyone is staying in it. It's great.
Yeah, we still have over 100 players, which means 50 games in a round. So, um, the first game that we wanted to talk about round one was one of the big games. So we had our general rating and our army rating set up to determine the round one matchups. That can all be explained in the list review show that we did last week. But the first game we're going to talk about is Philip Cartier versus Pitaray. So these are two big players, highly skilled players, bring in probably two of the best armies in the game at the moment. Philip with his Living Cities, and Pitaray with his Seraphon. Talk about these players in these lists briefly, Stuart, because these are some of the titans at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, so coming in, I was expecting a lot of Living Cities and Seraphon just to get played. I just quickly on Seraphon. You can see Pitar's list here. Now it's sort of what we were saying before the fact. In that we have the Celestin Prime with the Slam, that kind of long range combo. And then yeah, still the Salamanders and the Bastillodon in Thunder Lizard. So nothing new really, but still yeah, mega powerful army. And then we had Living Cities, which is kind of a
Bit on the
historically
block, isn't it?
yeah, it's a historically techie build, which I know Owen's in the chat. I know he played it a lot. A lot of people have played Living Cities over the years, but the biggest buff that it's ever gotten is this new Stormcast book, really, because it's gotten access
100%.
to Fulminators who do an absurd amount of damage on the charge, and like in Living City, they're much reliable to actually get the charge off than they are even in Stormcast. And he's also got the Stormdrake Garden here, which I guess with Fade Away can basically move what like 36 inches. So yeah, um, yeah,
Very fast, very hard hitting army
it's
is what
interesting because it's
Philip's
sort of a
got.
historically techie kind of finesse army that's become more of like a punch you in the face alpha army,
Yeah,
potentially. Yeah.
with a lot of survivability added by that pesky Frostheart Phoenix, right? That -1 to wound bubble's awful.
Still just the absolute the greatest avoider of nerfs in the history of Age of Sigmar, the Frostheart Phoenix. I don't know how it always makes it through, but here we are, another year of the
Right,
Frostheart
so
Phoenix.
Philip versus Pitaray. This was on round one. Obviously, we were playing First Blood, the battle plan, which is a simple three in the middle battle plan with a rule that everyone forgets, which is the vantage point. And this game, summarized by Philip, was a game of screens and trading. So this is basically explain trading and screening when you get to these high level games, Stuart, because this pretty much summarizes the whole game.
Well, I mean, these lists are fairly similar in terms of composition, right? Like we've got kind of like a set of heroes, and then some crap, which is the battle line, right? So 10 for Eagle Guard, Dread Spears, 10 Ironbreakers versus just skinks, right? So
Yep.
there's your crap. So there's your screens, right? Now, the trading between the screens and the trading between these more kind of hammer units is really what's going to determine the outcome of these games, as opposed to maybe when you're playing like a more monster oriented game where it's just like whoever takes down the first big bad guy, right? Like if you're playing Kragnos versus Nagash or something like that, the game is just whichever big guy dies first, right? But in these sorts of particularly in the order armies tend to have these sort of composition, the game becomes about trading and using your screens effectively. Yep.
So the way that it went down this game is basically the Philip was able to trade his big unit of dragons all for all of the Sallies and the Prime. So I think he just basically yeeted them using the hero phase move, did some of the shooting with the breath attacks. And when you've got 6 of them rolling, they can just, if they spike, they can absolutely just annihilate something. And then charged in and got rid of the Sallies and the Prime. So that was the trade that Philip was able to do. And then Pitaray traded back by trading his Bastiladon for the Phoenix. And that all happened in the first turn of the game, I think, the first turn, 1 or 2 turns of
Jeez.
the
Okay.
game.
Yep.
So big dust up, big punch up, all of the big things were gone. I think Philip was just left with a unit of Fulminators, a squad, Delaria, the what's that game called?
Um.
The Quest one, Warhammer
The,
Quest game,
the Forbidden Tower. The
something like that.
Hallowed
Wolf
Mansion.
and Khan, something like that.
No, no, no.
She's
Curse
from
City.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
Curse City, and a squad of alcoholics from the Free Guilds was all that he had left, and Pitaray had, I think, like his Slan, a unit of Skinks, and 1 Sally, I think, survived
Yep. Yep.
after that big dust up, and the Fulminators were able just to mop everything up, because Fulminators do that, right? They're one of the punchiest units in the game at the moment.
Yeah. They're
So
very much a
Philip was,
mop.
yeah, very much a mop, was pretty much able to table Pitaray by the end of the game, but this is AOS 3. Philip missed 1 battle tactic. Pitaray didn't. Pitaray got all the bonus points for killing those monsters in the dragons and the phoenix, and it tipped the game by a single point. So Pitaray actually took this game out by 1 point. And I think this was just a perfect example of 2 big lists, 2 big Titan players going at it. Huge scrap in the middle, classic trading of units, and then the tiniest of margins bringing it to the win. So, do we think a lot of top meta games are going to end up with this sort of the way it played out? Big bash up, trade units, and then whoever can get the last couple of points on the tiniest of margins.
Yeah, I think the Stormdrake Guard are very much like flying first class. I think it's like, yeah, you can just kind of get in there really quick, but it's just super expensive on both in terms of the points cost, like 680, which is a lot.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, my experience playing against them is if you start winning against them, it just feels like you're at like a buffet or something. It's like, all right, I'm going to take, broken ranks. I mean, I know they're not battle line in this list, but in Stormcast, it's like, oh, I'm going to take broken ranks and I'm going to kill one of them. And then you go, I'm going to go bring it down and I'm going to kill one of them. Like, you just keep getting all these points. Because even if you just kill one monster in the unit, obviously you get the extra point
Yeah.
at the end of the turn. And obviously the battle tactics as well. So, yeah, they do kind of bleed points. And although, yeah, Pitaray also has a monster in the Bastiladon. Philip's got, the Froststar Phoenix and the Stormdrake Guard. So there's a lot of kind of sitting points there. Now, yeah, that extra point from the Stormdrake Guard, I guess, is really what made the difference, right?
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, that just goes to show that, like, for a unit like Fulminators, right, which in this list doesn't have any role, like, they don't bring a cost in terms of your opponent getting points scored for killing them, whereas the Stormdrake Guard do. And I guess that's something that makes them perhaps stronger in a certain way than the Stormdrake Guard. Yeah.
They don't give away the points. Yeah, I can see that because if those 4 Stormdrake Guards were more Fulminators and Philip was able to get the same result with the same trades, he would have won this game because they wouldn't have given away those points. So, food for thought. I think definitely everyone just sees Stormdrake Guard and think we'll take them, and you can be quite YOLO with them, aren't they? They're quite a YOLO unit, but they do give away points when they go down, and I think that's probably the lesson that Philip learnt here. But I wish I watched that game because that sounded like an absolute slobber knocker. And I'm sure it's definitely not the end of Philip's run. He can definitely claw his way back with this list.
I would love to know what he thinks by the end of the tournament, having used this list for 6 games. Because I think this is a list that probably a lot of people have thought about bringing. This doesn't necessarily have to just go into living cities. You can take this in other cities' allegiances. And
Sky's another good one, isn't it, for this
yeah,
sort of build?
yeah. So it's interesting to see how this sort of build is going to go. He might find that he wants more units, and he just gets rid of the 1-drop. I think that's probably how I would prefer to play it, just because, like, I mean, basically what happened in that game is he kind of went for the alpha, and he got a lot.
Trades, yeah.
He did get a lot. But yeah, I wonder if this sort of list is maybe going to be, higher in the win percentage if you kind of play a bit more cagey with the mega long range threats in the Stormdrake Guard and the Fulminators. I don't know. Yeah, I'm interested to see what he has to say at the end of it.
Rather than an alpha, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. So Philip's list highlights 2 of the big bad units in the Stormcast book, the Fulminators and the Dragons, and then the other big bad unit in the Stormcast book that we can't forget about in this tournament, Stuart, is Vanguard Raptors.
Yeah.
So
Tons of
the
fun.
next game we're going to talk about is it's not as definitely not as close as a game as Phillips and Pitarays, and we're going to be talking about Matt Terrell versus Jorge Castillo. So this is Nighthaunt Nagash versus Stormcast Eternal shooting. Just by me telling you that matchup, you can probably tell how it went. Stuart, can you please tell me how the Vanguard Raptors? So the top down, we're just going to say it straight out. Nagash died turn 1 in this matchup.
Yeah, and
Right?
everyone was
happens.
sad.
And everyone was sad. So
Yeah.
can you explain how that happened and why that might have happened?
Well, I mean, if you do the math, because I was thinking of taking Nagash to this event, okay? And I sat down and did the math of like, okay, can Nagash survive turn 1 against Vanguard Raptors? And my answer was like, probably not. So that's why I didn't bring him. Now I know Matt just wanted to bring him to see kind of where he was at, which is a perfectly justifiable reason to bring him. It's like, absolutely go ahead and do that. And yeah, I think you're just really hoping you don't get paired into the Vanguard Raptors because there's not really anything that you can kind of do. Like I know some people were maybe critical of the fact that he gave away the first turn to the Stormcast, because the other move is there you take first and then you put up Mystic Shield, and then maybe like if Jorge deploys badly, which I'm assuming he didn't because he's a good player, but if he deploys badly, maybe you can get in some like sneaky taggy Hex Wraith charge, which you don't like get Unleashed Hell off and then die. I don't know. There's something there, but yeah, the tricky thing is with the Relictor with the High Priest, right? He's got a 2-up rerollable prayer, right? I mean, 2-up rerollable teleport is pretty good, right? And he's obviously got that mirror shield, so you can't shoot him. He's just sitting there with a 2-up rerollable teleport that you can't shoot off. There's only like a few armies that can actually kill him from range with like really specific rules. Seraphon being one of them, obviously. Yeah, it's just tricky to play against because he just picks them up in the hero phase. And the thing that I think, my understanding was that there was a bit of a dispute in the game about whether the Raptors can teleport and then hero phase shoot. So the way the Holy Command is worded, it's like at the start of the hero phase, you say like, I'm gonna shoot in the hero phase with this unit, but you don't shoot like straight away. So what that means is you can go, I'm gonna use the command ability, and then I'm gonna teleport, and then I'm gonna shoot. So given that they have 30-inch range, it's very hard to A, hide small heroes, and then B, zone out anything. Like, you can't zone out 30-inch range teleports. So if you're going to go second, those Vanguard Raptors are definitely going to get to shoot. And statistically...
into the key unit,
yeah, and statistically, they probably should take Nagash off. Now, if he'd gone first and put Mystic Shield up, I don't think they kill him, but... I mean, if he then gets the double, like, he's mega dead. Like, yeah, if the Stormcast gets the double, he's mega dead anyway. So,
yeah.
I think basically Matt's going like, well, yeah, like if I go second and Nagash survives, and then I can get the double, like that's my best path to victory in this game. And although it's a bit unlikely, like I would defend that decision because I think him going...
He's up against it, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's just, it's just one of those games where it's like, this is a terrible matchup. I've just got to, like, go for the, I don't know what it would be, like 1 in 8 probably that he survives or something. And then, try and go for the victory that way. But it's just awful. Yeah, and it's just one of those things where, like, with these 6 Vanguard Raptors, I find myself, like, really reluctant to bring a list without a teleport to a tournament now, just because of these guys. Like, I was thinking about playing Ogres in this tournament, but I was kind of just like, yeah, but I can't kill those Vanguard Raptors, so I'm just taking that for 5 turns, and I can't take it for 5 turns. That's sort of where I'm at. It's like, well, if I have range shooting or teleport or something, I can probably, like, cheat them off a little bit, but, yeah. They're rough, for sure.
And the Vanguard Raptors killed half of Matt's army in turn 1 before he could do anything, and then Matt still had 2 Stormdrake Guards and 2 Fulminators to deal with, and the Raptors as well with his chain rasp, and it ended pretty quickly, unfortunately for Matt. So we've talked about how the Vanguard Raptors are. Does this highlight why everyone sees the FAQ change as pretty much killing Nagash and putting him on the shelf? Is it because he's just no longer survivable, and that's simply him on the shelf now?
I think before, like, he was even before he was quite squishy. Outside of OBR, like in Soul Black Grave Lords, you did have some games where he'd just die. But like really, what he was good against was the mortal wound shooting. And like, yeah, Vanguard Raptors do some mortal wounds, but it's more the fact that it's Ren 2 and there's a lot of shots. So it's kind of a mixture between the Iron Drake style high range shooting and the Marathi Bowsnake Sentinel style shooting. It's like you get
kind of like salamanders, I think.
Yeah, it's basically like there's nothing in the game that has a defensive profile that can survive Vanguard Raptors. Basically, there's just nothing. Like even against like just hordes of crap, they actually do alright damage. Yeah, they're just a very, very strong unit. Now, obviously, the drawback is that they're very squishy, and kind of the result of that is you do have to often go low drop to make them work, which means then you don't have very many screens, right? So there are weaknesses to the Vanguard Raptors that I think are exploitable, but it's just that the path to exploiting them is like participating in the same thing that they participate in, which is like either teleports or long range shooting, right? So they kind of put the game towards like making things that are already really good like even better in long range shooting and teleporting. So yeah, I understand that they are a bit of a frustrating unit for people to play against. And I mean, after my game against my opponent, like he was kind of telling me, I was talking to him about a lot of things, but he was asking me like, what should I bring to like a casual gaming event if I'm playing Stormcast, because like they're really strong at the moment, so it might feel bad. And I was just saying like, just literally take anything other than Vanguard Raptors, like even Fulminators and Stormdrake Guard, like they're really strong, but they're just not as kind of feels bad, I think, as the long range shooting, especially if you take a relative with it and get the teleport off. So that is the world we're in. Now I don't know how people feel about the fact that Sentinels uh, got what
Exist
I think is a significant nerf, right? Um,
with the points.
yeah, with the points and also the unleash hell, I think that was a significant nerf. And
Yeah.
these guys got nothing. It seems a little bit strange, but anyway, that's
Well, they actually got buffed. I didn't realise that they had removed the rule that meant they don't get the 30-inch range if they stay still. But now they just get that and move. Right, they can move and still get 30-inch
oh,
range.
but between the books they got massively buffed. I mean, they got a lot more expensive, but they got they used to be one shot each. Now they're two shots each. So I mean that
Yeah, they're
yeah
just a lot.
yeah.
So sorry for pulling that game out, Matt. We know you don't mind, but it really does highlight the state of the meta at the moment with the Vanguard Raptors, and I think aptly demonstrates why Nagash might not be the terror that he was pre FAQ.
Yep.
Um, so we've got one more game that we want to sort of talk about in detail, and then we're going to go on a bit of a wider net is what we talk about. But the last game we're going to talk about is Hippie Chef, one of the TOs at the tournament, playing his Soulblight zombie list versus Lars Evanson and his Legion of the First Prince list with some corn units. So we characterize these two lists as that they're both DPS checklists. They're both noodle slappers that don't do loads of damage and trying to win on primary objectives and blocking up the board. So talk to me, Stuart, about DPS checklists and how they what is a DPS checklist and how do they sit in the meta at the moment?
Well, a DPS checklist. I do think the term is a little bit overused, but because I think people say that a lot with Gargants that it's a DPS check, but like I mean, we can see it on your screen right now. Like this is a lot more wounds than Gargants is, right? Like a lot more wounds than Gargants is. So this is more of a DPS check than Gargants is. So here we have like, I mean, he has kind of like a hero squadron here with Neferata, the zombie lord, and the Coven Throne, and then he kind of just has like Mr. Spade Bastard over here, and just the horde of crap, just just a horde of crap with 100
Literally
zombies.
100 of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's got live swarm in there as well, just to make it even more fun to deal with. Um, yeah, this is really good, by the way. And it has always been really good, and Hippie's always been using it. But I just haven't seen people run this many zombies, even on TTS. I guess it's not very fun to play with, but remember, when the book came out, me and my friend Arthur used to play, like ogres versus zombies all the time, and yeah, the zombies are great, man. So yeah, more people
Fantastic
should
at
play zombies.
controlling you off the objectives. I think what they do is because not only do they hold objectives by being bodies, they completely deny any opportunity you have of getting onto the objective because of the way that they can pile in 6 inches and move and snake about and stuff. They're just a really hard unit to get where you want to go. They're really hard to get past. Um,
Yeah,
Not
it's
that
sort of
they
a
do a
weird
lot and
thing
they
where
don't.
like
Yeah,
it's a weird thing where like when you're in combat with them, you think like, oh, they're here now, but they actually just
they're
move
not.
a lot when they're in combat because like it used to be obviously that you'd had to pile into the closest model. So even when you had the 6 inch pile in before, you did kind of get a bit stuck. But now it's just like you charge the zombies and they can just like have their own agenda about where they're gonna go now, even though they're stuck in combat. So they're really good against it in these like horde versus horde grinding, even though like their damage is a little spec for like elite units, which is I suspect something they put in there as like a balancing factor because they don't do that much damage against like I mean in this case it was
Rings, yeah,
horrors, right? Um, I
yeah.
apologize for the format of the list, but yeah, it's basically what they were coming up against this time was these units of pinks, the two units of 10 pinks here, and then the summoned ones. So yeah, I mean here the advantage is you can really kind of snake him around, whereas the pinks are a bit more plop and done, right? But how did it go down in this game, Luke?
So Hippie Chef got turn one, and he put I don't know which units went where, but zombies on all three objectives. I think he had the unit of 40 in the middle and a unit of 220s on either side. He then put in his game summary the two units on the side stayed there for the whole game. That's where they were. So they went there. I think he phrased it as got their deck chairs out and started reading the Sun newspaper. You know, so that's what they did, and that's Hippie's more than happy to play the game like that. They're not doing anything fancy. They're sitting there and telling you to, I'm a problem you need to come deal with. Um, Lars, in response, then charged 10 pinks into the 40 zombies. Um, and some of the shooting from the pinks and a little bit of damage that they did. And the zombies then got to strike back, but they accidentally killed 5 horrors, Stuart, which meant they split and split again. And I think they won the objective for the first prince by 1 model, with the splitting by the zombies accidentally killing too many of them. Which is always the thing when you're fighting horrors. You're like, I don't want to kill. I either need to kill them or not do any damage because you might end up losing the objective thanks to the split and split again. I've always found that quite hard to deal with. Trying to do that maths in your head is how much damage should I try and do to these horrors. But so it came a big grind fest in the middle. The big bads, so the Bloodthirsters and Be'lakor, eventually got to play with Neferata and the Terror, the zombie dragon. And I think not a lot happened. I think both of them slapped against each other and did not a lot. So
Yeah.
that can happen. Obviously, Neferata can make things like the zombie dragon and the Blood Knights ethereal, um, which doesn't help with the Corn player if they can't get their 6s to wound on their Boomthirster, which I don't think Lars got too many of those. And it basically was a pretty static game state. That was pretty much the game. Hippie had those 2 corner objectives. They were scrapping over the middle. And Lars wasn't able to shift them. Basically, they stayed there. They kept coming back. Obviously, Hippie can retreat out of combat, get double and rally them, heal them back with all the healing. Life Swarm's doing some healing as well. So both lists are not trying to do loads of damage, and in this game they didn't. Um, do in the previous metas and stuff, it was always horrors that would win these sort of DPS check bodies on objectives lists. But what is it particularly about zombies? Is it that 6-inch piling and be able to stop majority of the? It's really hard to sort of explain. It's something you have to visualize. Where the way that Hippie plays the zombies is that during the fight, during the grind, where only a couple of models are dying a turn, because of the 6-inch piling and the new piling rules, he can sort of snake out.
Okay, I think we lost him, but he was saying, yeah, so the goal is to really snake out with the zombies. And you're playing kind of a different game to what a normal combat unit would play. It's slightly different to the pink horrors, and you're kind of looking to get them in a position where they can interrupt your opponent from doing something. Yeah, that's the main thing. Okay, just bear with us for a sec while I wait for Luke to come back. Could be me as well. Okay, good.
Oh,
We're
we lost
back.
the recording.
We're back. All
We're
right.
back. No problem. So what I was just telling to the people, Stuart, whilst you went to the toilet and whatever you did, was that what do you do to take into account these DPS checklists like Hippie Chef's list when you're list building? One of the answers we sort of talked about was these Stormdrake guards and these fulminators and things like Maw Crushers, and it's how much do you commit to going heavy hammer to deal with these sort of lists, or heavy screens and support heroes to try and deal with it. Because I brought this list up to talk about how our lists like these, the answer to these meta Stormcast lists and these meta Ironjaws lists that we're seeing at the moment. What do you think about that?
I don't think so. I think they're the answer to the things that answer the Stormcast and that kind of thing.
What do you mean by that?
Like so a lot of the stuff that's really good at the moment, like Stormcast, really high save, and what would counter that is mortal wounds, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I'm kind of joking here, but like spiders, for example, from Gloomspite kits, something like that, right? I mean, it's a good example because that unit does literally no damage aside from mortal wounds, right? Now, if you're a zombie, you don't really mind the sight of a spider, really, because yeah, the mortal wounds and normal wounds are exactly the same thing to a young zombie. So this sort of list would be an absolute nightmare for any kind of list that's just spamming mortal wounds. Especially if it's not like, obviously you don't want to, some of that mortal wounds to be that new Nurgle spell that like rinses a whole horde on a 2-up. That's not great even for zombies, but like, yeah, I mean, for new Nurgle, for example, I mean, it's not in this tournament, but you do a lot of like piddly kind of mortals, like lots of just like random
Yeah.
mortal wounds that
Sprinkled
come out of
around.
nowhere.
Yeah.
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 And like this list is really kind of just that just doesn't do anything as this list, right? Because the zombies just don't really care about a few mortal wounds.
You really need that concentrated damage. So the Stormcast list with those Fulminators would just be able to take out 40 zombies, right? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. I also think, I mean, the big swing in this game was the fact that Hippie was lower drop than Lars, who's playing Legion in the first sprint, so he was able to get on all the objectives. But all those top meta lists are, Seraphon aside, Seraphon's not often one drop, but Stormcast is often one drop, and same with cities. You can probably just like either zone out all the zombies or like kill enough of them turn one that it's going to be hard for them to get on the objectives, even if there are like 100 of them. You kill enough of them turn one, zone off the objectives with your crap, and you should be okay, I think. Yeah.
So very quickly, last thing I want to touch about this game is that if you look at Lars's list, it's not quite the archetype of the super hardcore Legion of the First Prince list that we've seen previously, but it's still got the pinks and it's still got Bellacore and stuff. Do we think that the emergence of the Stormcast Fulminators and Dragons and the more Crushers from the Iron Jaws has that sort of just got an immediate answer to these DPS checklists, and it's why we're seeing less of these Legion of the First Prince lists? That obviously Philip took this list something similar in one last event. Do we think that he didn't this time because of the Stormcast and the heavy damage that we're seeing from these new books?
Mm, yeah, I suspect the Stormcast matchup is not that great. Um, I'm not 100% sure though. I would like to see that go down in this tournament because obviously the main thing of concern is the fact that the Corn Demon Prince can just be shot off by the Vanguard Raptors. I think that's the main
Yeah.
thing that you would hate to be dealing with as the Legion of the First Prince player because once that guy goes down and your opponent can make all his key charges into the horrors, it does become a lot easier to deal with. And obviously the
Kill
the
them.
peaks have
Yeah.
gone up a substantial amount of points, right? 35 points, which does generally mean you're going to take 10 less. I think in most lists it works out that you swap a 10 for something. Um, yeah, or I mean, in this case, he's got a lot of heroes, right, with the corner heroes, but probably the best version of this list is just like Bellacore, Corn Demon Prince Epitome, and then all your pinks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even that list,
Absolutely.
it loses a substantial amount of pinks. But it's still a lot of wounds. But yeah, once that Corn Demon Prince goes down, it's a lot harder for them to win. So I know you can Bellacore the Vanguard Raptors, but yeah, eventually that's coming off, and then they can shoot the Corn Demon Prince. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes, but maybe not the best. Yeah.
So Hippie Chef able to win the grind on the noodle fight list that we had here. Um, we said that we were going to just talk specifically about these couple of games. So they're the three games that we wanted to talk about. Um, in the Discord, we have a games summary chat where everyone has been posting, their games, and I asked people just to give a brief summary. There's been a revolt, Stuart, led by Wilhelm in the game summary chat. Everyone's been posting absolute essays and really detailed and actually quite well written reports on the games that have been happening at this tournament. So I'd really, really encourage everyone to go into that game summaries channel that we have in the Discord, scroll up and check out all these games because they've done our job for us, Stuart. We don't need to go through every single detail of every single game because it's all written in there. Um, there was one game report that really stuck out, though, wasn't there, Stuart? I think Sam Morgan has won already, as he has already. He's won the internet again by writing a little narrative story. Is this?
Yeah, now the pressure is he has to do this every round now. That's the pressure. So as always in life, you do a wonderful thing and then it becomes more work. But um, yeah, please go check this out. So he's AOS List Labs on Twitter. And we're not going to do a read because we'll ruin it. But yeah, go check out Sam's game summary, which he's wonderfully made into. I guess it's kind of in the style of old Warhammer Fantasy fluff, like very similar kind
Yeah,
of formatting.
it is.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which I know is deliberate because I believe he runs. See, he has the army in real life, his Trog army, and I believe he runs the old Trogs, if I'm not mistaken. So Sam's a big fan of the old Gloomspite models. I mean, the new ones are obviously great as well, but back in the day, the old Goblin models, he's got a lot of those. Sort of mixed in with new models and stuff as well. But yeah, go check out this game summary. It's awesome. And Trogs are brilliant. Yes.
They, they, it's disguised in this beautiful narrative tournament, but Sam was actually able to get a win against a pretty nasty Stormcast Dragons list by utilizing some pretty janky garrison rules from the new Loon Shrine. So if you can see past the narratives and actually if you watch the game, you would know that there was quite a lot of high tactics in Sam games that was able to get him the win. But yeah, check it out, and thank you everyone for putting in your game summaries. We really appreciate it, and keep doing it. Um, that brings us to the end of like the round list, a matchup part of the show. And Stuart, you said you wanted to talk to me just about some of your wider meta thoughts and how you're sort of seeing the ebb and flow of the tournament going so far.
Yeah. So I did a really basic Excel graph. Now I did spend 2 hours this morning, uh, trying to find out if there's a correlation between because obviously we matched on general rating and
Yep.
army rating, right? And I wanted to find out whether in the case where someone's general rating was really different with their opponent. So let's say they had +2 general rating, but then their list was 2 points weaker than their opponent. Whether that predicted them winning or not, and it doesn't. so I think what that says to me is that actually the model we use, which was kind of putting player skill and list strength at about the same level, is probably right. Just based on what happened in the first round. Now, as the rounds go on, the player skill and list strength will be probably more useful of a stat than it is now, because obviously in the first round we matched everyone on kind of equal skill and that kind
Rating.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the differences are not going to be that big. You're not really going to have like a 1 star or 2 star general versus a 5 star in the first round. That didn't really happen. Yeah, there were a few cases where it did, but most of the time it didn't happen. Yeah,
It's one of the things that we're hoping to sort of see from the stats, maybe further down the line and as the event unfolds, is almost like what matters more is being an experienced general that's won 5 games previously and is sort of familiar with the tournament scene. Does that do you better, or just bring in a hard as nails net list? Is that going to get you more wins? It's sort of the battle between the two. Is it hardcore lists or hardcore players? Is we hoping to sort of see maybe an answer to that question? And if so, how do you think that plays out? Do you think a hardcore list is going to beat a hardcore player bringing a softer list, or what?
well, I think from the player's perspective, the experienced general types want the game to be all about high skill and not about list strength, but then people who are new to the game want it to be more about list strength than necessarily player skill. And the reason for that is, it's happened in video games and all sorts of things like that. Like a video game like Street Fighter or something, right? It's just like so inaccessible for someone who's new, because I mean the combos and stuff are just so hard to understand. So I think ideally you want them to be kind of equal, right? You want the game to be skill based, but you don't want it to be so skill based that someone that's new has no hope of ever becoming good at the game, right? Or no
Yeah,
hope of
makes
winning.
sense. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I think it's for them to be equal is kind of what we're looking for. And if that's the case in this tournament, I think the game's probably in a good place, to be honest. Yeah.
Interesting. Right, Stuart. So what's this graph that you've got up in front of us?
Okay, now first of all, the first thing I did is just looked at like the first, the most popular like 5 factions, because those are the stats that only make any sense. But then I just thought everyone would feel a bit lonely, so just decided to get them all. Now, if I've forgotten one, because I forgot like 3 of them, and people told me this morning, like, Stuart, you've forgotten my army, and some of them were just tragic. Like I forgot the corn, which is like something to talk about. But yeah, here's our win rates after round 1. Now. There's some weird stuff going on. Now, first of all, I just need to talk about like the outliers, which is just like 1 or 2 players. And that would be Flesh Eater Courts, Bigwa, Sons of Behemoth, and then the 2 bottom factions, Fireslayers and Slanesh, all had like 1 or 2 players. So when we're looking at like 100% win rates or 0% win rate, like it's kind of a bit of a shitty stat, to be honest. But
Not a big enough sample size
yeah,
for those ones.
yeah,
Really.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But then sort of around the middle, like the Stormcast, Soulblight, Seraphon. So those are the 3 most popular factions. Yeah. Now those 3 had a lot of games, and they're all kind of where I think they're sort of where you would expect them to be, really.
Well, they're all above 50%. And
yeah.
But this is round 1 where we had a lot of these Stormcast and Seraphon lists sort of facing each other, and they've still managed to get above 50%. So does that mean every time that they're not playing against an opposition Stormcast, they're basically winning every time?
Yeah. I mean, that's it's interesting. I mean, it shows it. I think it shows me that they're probably about the same power level, right?
As each other.
Yeah. Now, I would say that I think the general rating of Seraphon players was higher than the general rating of Stormcast players on average. There were also more Stormcast players, so that's part of it. But yeah, the fact that Stormcasts have kind of come out on top on the win rate suggests that, yeah, I mean, it's a strong book for sure. But I mean, there are some other interesting things that happen. So I have to talk about the fact that Khorne and Gloomspite, 3 players each, both got 100% in round 1. Now, unfortunately, the dream is sort of over with Gloomspite because we just have had 2 very tragic and narrow losses from the Trogs in round 2. So
Bless.
I haven't lost yet. I haven't played my game yet. I probably will lose, but at least in round 1, the Gloomspite dream was achieved, and we all got to have some fun.
And as was the Khorne dream, Stuart.
Yes. Now, I do think maybe with Khorne we maybe did underestimate the list a little bit. I think
we underestimated the whole army actually.
Yeah, I think they're
kind of okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think them and Gloomspite are kind of in a similar spot. Like I would say Gloomspite pre Kragnos and Marscroll of Sorgoth like was a lot worse, but now it's like I feel like we've kind of got a functional army. Obviously with some glaring weaknesses, like I know, and same with Khorne. But we kind of do what we do well. Like Khorne, you still slap when everything lands, you still slap, right?
And it's also got a lot of board control with the summoning and the lot of the screening units like flesh hounds and things like that. So they've board control, and all those big units are able to hide behind those screens quite well, and then strike at the right time with those bloodthirsters and stuff, which can do quite a lot of damage if it goes well in that moment. It's just whether it does or not, right?
Yeah, and also just like having it, I think also having access to an auto unbind, and you and I were talking about this the other day. Having access to an auto unbind and your allegiance abilities, like huge.
My army cannot. I've decided, Stuart, that my army is the Sylvaneth magic bomb list with the True Lord Warsong Revenant. I can't play against Khorne. My win condition is denied every turn.
Well, neither can I, right? Because mine's the same thing, right? I'm just trying to get bridge off. If I get bridge off, I can play the game. If I don't get bridge off, I cannot play the game. Like that's pretty much where I'm at. Yeah, it's interesting. On that note,
a bit of a gatekeeper, maybe.
Khorne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a gatekeeper to like Wendy's or something. Like that's basically the idea, right? Like they're not a gatekeeper to the top armies, obviously, but
no, but for some of the
I think they're probably like
magic focused ones. I think
like probably like the bottom of mid tier. That's probably it. That's
Mm.
probably right, isn't it? Like they're in mid tier, but I think they're probably going to keep the weaker armies out of mid tier. Yeah, I think Gloomspite was probably the same. It's probably just like having really strong monsters that do a lot of damage behind screens. That composition is
It's a
not
good way to
something that
play. Yeah.
it's not something that weaker armies can deal with, I think, unfortunately. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that there is a gatekeeping aspect to Khorne. Now, speaking of gatekeeping, now Sons of Behemoth did win both their games in round one. Now we were expecting a lot more people to play them in the tournament, but maybe a lot of the, we talk about this psychological profile thing a lot, but maybe a lot of the Timmy spikes, which is like that combo, is what would play the Sons of Behemoth, right? Because the Johnnies just have no interest in Sons of Behemoth because there's just no list building at all, right? Yeah. Now Luke is a Timmy spike, so he knows what I'm talking about. But I think a lot of the
Spimmy.
yeah, a Spimmy, yeah. So a lot of the Spimmies would have gone to, I think, Stormcast, right? I think that's fair to say, like the Stormdrake
With the
spam,
dragons and the
yeah,
Fulminators, absolutely.
yeah, right up their alley. So I think probably a lot of the players that would play Sons of Behemoth. Now that I say that, actually, there's a lot of my friends who play Sons of Behemoth who have now gone to Stormcast playing the dragons. Yes, so I think a
Very
lot of them have
quickly,
gone
for
there.
those,
Yeah.
just very quickly, Spike, Timmy, Johnny. Most of you know what it is. If you don't, then Vince Venturilla did a really good episode on it, didn't he? Sort of explained it, and it's from Magic Gathering, but it's like psychographic profiles of players where Johnny's are sort of your combo players, Timmy's like your big monsters and just like going raw, and then Spike's like winning. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying Timmy, Spikes, and Johnny's, and any combo of the two.
Yep. And AOS 3 has very much been the age of the Spimmy, where it's like, you like big monsters, and now you get to win with them, right? That's pretty much
Yep.
what's happened. Yep. Because it used to be you like big monsters, and you want to win with them, but you can't. So what do you play? That was always the Spimmy problem. It's like, all right, I guess I'll play like Fire Slayers. That was a classic Spimmy army, right? It's like, I've got one Magma Droth.
I feel
Yeah.
very targeted.
Okay, but what else did we have that was interesting? I mean,
I was the only
Sylvaneth.
Sylvaneth player that lost.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 won. Same with the Bone Splitters. Yeah, and there's a lot of dead 50s here. That had like just 1 or 2 players. I mean, really, this tournament. Just if I get this up now, like a lot of it is, dominated by a few armies. Really, now like there's a lot of KO. And they did okay. Yeah, they had a 40% win rate. I think it was 2 out of 5.
Not that good.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably what you'd expect. But yeah, I mean, just looking at this graph, I mean, you can kind of see that. I mean, most of it is Stormcast, Seraphon, Cities, and Soulblight, right? Really.
That's the takeaway that we got from our list review show is that those 3 armies, Seraphon, Stormcast, and Cities, pretty much make up nearly half the meta. Not quite, but nearly. And those are the 3 armies. They had all of their plus 50% win rates, didn't they? And then we reckon that they're the top. So it's a very hard meta at the moment. There's a lot of people bringing the top armies. But what about some of those armies that we think would have been good but low representation? So I'm thinking something like the Crawl Boys and the Lumineth Roundlords. Why are they down there?
I mean, I think with the exception of one of them, I think the Lumineth lists are not like super net listy. Like they're kind of a more creative experimental style of list. Yeah. So with the exception of the one Fox list that won, I don't think we'd expect those lists to necessarily be in the top tables in round 6 or anything like that. So which is fine. Now the Cruel Boys, I don't know. I was talking with in one of the team chat that I'm in today about whether we should be taking Cruel Boys the next teams event, and I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know where they're at now. A lot of people think they're totally bin. I have to disclose really, really I haven't actually played against them yet. I've played with them a couple of times, but I haven't actually played against them yet. So I don't know what it is to be like on the receiving end of them. Yeah, I don't know.
They're
Maybe they
kind of
might be weak. Yeah.
well, they're kind of like the Vanguard Raptors, but slightly worse. They're lower range, but they will just delete something of yours. It's a bit easier to screen against. It's a bit easier to try and backboard and outrange it with a few more things. They've got threat range of 27, which is a lot, but it's not like the entire board where Vanguard Raptors can do the same thing for the entire board. Um, but they do a hell of a lot of multiple unit range, which some armies just fall down to. Like some armies cannot win against that. Um, but they're weak. They're way weaker to a double turn or a fast Alpha Strike punch unit that can just tear through them. Like dragons will just rip through the Cool Boys lists.
Mm.
Um, and I think Cool Boys have got. I think they have was one or two match up against dragons and stuff like that, and that doesn't go well for them, does it?
Yeah, looking at it, I'm not entirely sure what they'd be good against, which I guess would make them bad.
Well, I think they're good against everything that isn't the top three armies at the moment.
Well, but
But
even if
when
you
the
look
top
at
three
some of
armies
the
at the
weaker
moment,
armies, though, right? Like, I don't think they're particularly great against Sylvaneth, are they? So,
well,
hmm.
I played against one in the practice sort of rounds that we're having in between, and was able to win. They can mitigate the shooting with the woods and stuff like that, and I was able to outrange with my spell portal bomb, and the dragons were able to pick off one of the units of Bolt Boys from the start. So potentially, but I think that's a niche. I mean, you're always going to get one or two odd matchups that don't quite work out. But when you're talking about the meta as a whole, I think Cruel Boys are similar to Doc in that they're a solid 4-on-1 army, and they'll beat pretty much anything that sits below them in the tiers, but not the top filth. And that's why it's sort of they're not going to ever be a tournament winning army.
I don't know
Personally,
though, because I can see what you're saying. Like, I can definitely see, like, if I'm playing ogres versus cruel boys, that's going to be a rough time, especially if you're playing foot ogres, right? Like, you just won't get there in time. But if you're playing something like Nighthaunt against cruel boys, I would have thought that would actually be fairly manageable for the Nighthaunt.
so just quite untested at the moment. They're not being picked up by loads and loads of people, and they're one of the
uh,
newer books.
yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, I was just thinking, like a lot of these weaker armies have teleports,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. Yeah, that's what I kind of noticed is like looking at the bottom of the tier list. I'm like all these armies have teleports and ambushes and stuff. Why are they so bad? And then you look at the war scrolls and it's like, oh, okay. Like Sylvanesco, it's like, oh, yeah.
Okay. Does your graph here, or does your general meta thoughts lean into two types of armies? And I think the new battle terms um, encapsulate this, where you've got armies that have loads of tricks and unique playstyles, but bin war scrolls, and then these armies, in my mind, like Stormcast and Ironjawz, that have less tricks but just powerhouse war scrolls, solid stats, good damage, good saves, good movement, and stuff like that. Is there a stark difference between those types of armies, and which way is it favoured?
Yeah, I mean, Stormcasts have a completely bin allegiance. Like, that's absolutely true. There's barely anything there. There's like the drop-in thing, which is nice, but not particularly synergistic with any of their units, aside from, I guess, the dragons, but you can get there anyway, right? Um,
Well, I think they're quite good with the Annihilators.
yeah,
As
that's true.
and
That
then
that is
making
true
yeah.
with the Annihilators, but I feel like the Annihilators would just have that on their war scroll in another army or something, because, like, how else are they getting
They
there?
don't if you ally them, so
um, yeah, but then you've got like I also think that some of the weaker armies have like weak allegiance abilities though. Like Gloomspite has awful allegiance abilities.
Sylvaneth.
Sylvaneth has like kind of weird
We've
allegiance
won.
abilities.
We've got none.
Yeah, like
We've got
yeah, a lot of
we've got Battle Shock
a lot of the
immunity.
weaker ones have like one allegiance ability really, right? Like Gloomspite's one is just sort of random. Um, yeah, so I guess there's some convergence with the strong and weak armies on the level of the allegiance abilities, but yeah, it's just the war scrolls that are mainly different. And then I feel like a lot of the armies that are sitting in the middle are like a lot of the old books that have lots of allegiance abilities, but maybe the war scrolls are not as strong as the newer books. Like they have like just literal replacements, which are better versions of the same thing. Like I think Vanguard Raptors are probably just better than bow snakes in
We've
just
seen
about
with
every way,
cities,
right?
right? what you've just said is encapsulated by cities.
Yeah,
All these really
yeah.
cool lynch abilities and like medium units, and now we've had that ultimate war scroll introduced. It's just been taken every time.
Yeah. And you can see, like, Slaves of Darkness have quite a few Allegiance abilities. Same with, Ideneth. I mean, KO doesn't necessarily have, like, a load of Allegiance abilities now that the Triumphs have been kind of just nerfed off the face of the earth, but they used to. Um, they definitely used to. Yeah. It's interesting. We'll see where we land. But yeah, for now, it kind of looks like middle's kind of like all your techie stuff is in the middle. And then, like,
Our house war scrolls are at the top.
yeah, and then I feel like the guys at the bottom are just trying to climb their way up with just teleports. Like, that's the way forward. It's like, well, my unit sucks, but like at least if I teleport him into 6 Vanguard Raptors and then fang a 9-inch charge, then I don't have to deal with that now, and then maybe I can play the game with the rest of my army. Like, I feel like that's a fine strategy. I feel like
That's my personal experience with Sylvaneth. So yes. Right, Stuart. Have you got any other stats or thoughts about the tournament?
No, other than just we'll keep track of this win rates as we go. And also the general list rating thing, as I was saying before, will get more interesting as the tournament goes on. Now, just from the perspective of the TO, we are expecting there to be a lot of blowouts in round 2. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a result of the way that we did the matchups in round 1. Yeah, so I know there's going to be some games that maybe are a little bit of a feels bad, but definitely from round 3 onwards to 6, you should get a really good game. And so normally at a normal tournament, like your round 1 would be your feels bad, but we wanted
Played it for you.
yeah, we kind of wanted to keep people after the first week, get them in the swing of the tournament. Bring some new people on board that haven't maybe played in the TTS tournament before, and then from week 2 onwards, you kind of get the round 1 feels bad experience sometimes. That's not going to be for everyone, but there are going to be some people who feel like, I've been matched.
It's to a lesser extent.
Yeah, I've been matched. There's going to be some people who are like new to the game with like a weak list who are going to get matched into a 5-star general with a 5-star list rating who happen to lose the first round. So, and unfortunately, it is going to happen, but just bear with us, and you'll have fun the rest of the tournament. Yep.
Exactly. Right, Stuart. I just want to quickly ask you about your game in the tournament. Just give us a 2 minutes overview of your game and how that went and how your tournament's going so far.
Well, I'd say yeah. So I have been enjoying playing this list. My list is Kragnos and the spiders, but
Yep.
it's very reliant on me getting my spells off. Really, I have to get the bridge off. Otherwise, Kragnos just kind of gets stuck behind things. Like you'd think, like the god of earthquakes or whatever he is, wouldn't get interrupted by a pillar or something, but he does. Yeah. He very much does. So he's always had that problem where he's like 10-inch move on a big base and then also doesn't fly. So there's so much awkwardness with getting him around the map. And yeah, bridge is kind of the new thing that's come in and save him because, his base is small enough that he can be bridged, and now he's got this 3d6 charge aura that he gives out. So obviously he can 3d6 charge, and then you can bring a buddy with him, like, maybe your buddy teleports themselves next to him when he comes out of the bridge, and then you both 3d6 charge in. So my list basically uses that sort of buddy system. So I've got the Arachnarok Spider, right, who I'm going to Hand of Gork with a Madcap Shaman, who's sitting in the corner because Luke. Gloomspite gets one of the tremendous things is that Hand of Gork spell is wholly within 24. So what that means is you can stick your little goblin in the corner. He's just living his best life, and he just picks up your spider and just puts him somewhere else on the table, right? And then your spider bro casts the bridge, brings Kragnos with him, and then you got your little reserve spider, your Skitterstrand spider, who's awful. It's just awful. Terrible. It's just awful. But he does come up with and join the fight. So you get like you get 2 spiders and Kragnos in kind of when you get the spells off. But if you don't get the spells off, you stand there looking a bit awkward. Now, I did get the spells off, so I was able to get the charges that I wanted. And Kragnos did roll a big 5 and a 6 into the two dragons I charged into, so he wiped them off. And then he just narrowly managed to kill the Knight Draconis after that. So yeah, Kragnos did the big bucks. He did eventually die to Bastion blowing up in his face, which was hilarious. Yeah, my opponent was a lovely dude. Thought he failed his battle tactic, but then Bastion blew up and saved the day. So he got the I think it was Slay the Warlord. He got by Bastion dying in Kragnos' face, which was hilarious. But yeah, I just killed enough at that point that the Spooters thankfully could kill 2 Stormdrake Guard. I was a little bit worried. I was like, can they do it? Like, is my whole army Kragnos? And it's not my whole army. It's like almost my whole army, but they were able to do it. Yep, that was my game. Yep. What about yours, Luke?
I think my list is somewhat comparable to yours in that it's very reliant on a couple of key spells going off, and it's a bit of an on or off army, right? It does or it doesn't. And this game I played against Zeno, who was running a Legion of the First Prince list with a lot of the Khorne demons, a lot of the Bloodthirsters. There was a Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster in there, which is the Dispelly one, not the 6-inch Piley one. And he basically won him the game. I couldn't get any of my spells off. I managed to get Throne of Vines off turn 1 on my War Song, so I was at +3. And then she's a 3-castle wizard because of my artifact, so then that gives me 14 more spells throughout the whole of the game. I only got 2 off out of 14 spells at +3 because the dice were not kind. And the +2 to the Unbind of the Wrath of Khorne meant any spell that I actually successfully cast, I low rolled and got like a casting value of like a 4 +3 into like a 7, and then he unbound it. So didn't get spell portal off, didn't get the nuclear bomb unleash spites off, and then without that I just didn't have any damage to clear off his screens to get onto the objectives, and I just got bodied off the objectives. And that's how I'm finding my list is going. I think every dice roll, even anything from a 2 up to a 10-inch charge, is 50-50. It's on or off, you know. It's how it matters. Every dice is just 50-50, and you just keep flipping that coin. You just keep flipping that coin, and it's simultaneously incredibly fun and entertaining, and also soul destroying at the same time. But yeah, I'm looking forward to round 2. I've got some Stormcast to try and blow up round 2. Hopefully, I can manage it then. Because in my practice games, I've managed to take out some of the big bads in my list. I've taken out Seraphon, I've taken out Stormcast, I've taken out Crawl Boys. But then again, I'll also lose to he won't mind me saying this, not the most optimal Legion the First Prince list, or I can lose to, I think you said in the list review show, 200 Clan Rats, and I completely agree with you. And it's just quite fun to play a list like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to round 2. Right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our round 1 roundup. We've changed the format a little bit, so it's a bit more meta thoughts and wide rather than specific details about the games. But if you want to find out specific details about the game, please do go into the game summaries chat on the Discord, or message opponents and message people, how did your game go? Or try and watch people's games. Everyone's games are being streamed live in the Discord, so there's loads of opportunities to find out all the nitty gritties of the tournament, which is one of the unique things we've got about being a TTS event. We encourage that you do so. Stuart, have you got anything you want to say to the people?
Just if you see Luke post an LFG in the LFG chat, just load up a Khorne army with Hex Georgia skulls and just bring that. All right, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that happened the other day. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for round 2. Bye bye.